The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for attending today. I know that your time is valuable, and we are so appreciative that you have joined us so that we can discuss next steps with the READ grant. For those of you who I have not had a chance to talk to, my name is Rebecca Harris, and I am your program specialist for the READ grant. With me today, I have Katie Houtlin, who is the Director of Elementary and Middle School Programs. She is going to be monitoring the question pane so that we can address your questions in real time as best as possible today. If we do not get to your question, we will most definitely follow up with you after the webinar. So let's get started. Awesome. So first of all, I wanted to say congratulations to all of you for being selected to apply to the READ grant. While I haven't had a chance to chat with all of you yet, I have spent the majority of the last 2 months of my life looking in depth at your application. So I feel like I know most of you and your teachers and students already, and we are so excited to work with you in the next year. So during our webinar today, we have 6 major objectives. After leaving this webinar, we want all of you to be able to identify major milestones within the READ grant application process, plan for grant application process by analyzing related documents, identify program requirements as potential READ grant awardees, identify next steps for the READ grant, ask clarifying questions to support the grant application process, and then also ask clarifying questions to support the READ grant kickoff within your region or district. So I know that one of the most pressing questions that we have received so far are when are dates for Summer Reading Academy is going to be finalized. So I wanted to share those with you right now. These will also be shared in a follow-up email, but I wanted to give you an idea of when and where Summer Academies will be occurring. At this point, the locations are tentative and will be communicated out to cohorts as they are finalized, but the dates for each reading academy are confirmed, and you're able to share these with your teachers immediately. So from July 8th through 12th in the Austin area, you can see our Region 3 cohorts, San Marcos CISD, Region 12 and Region 3 will attend together. We will have 2 concurrent summer reading academies on the week of July 15th to 19th. We are tentatively planning on having 1 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are currently in the process of looking for a home for our summer reading academy. Oh, so sorry, I'm getting notes that I am not being heard well, so I'm going to speak up. If that does not work, please let me know. So Region 10, Region 11, and Region 7 will attend in this tentative Dallas-Fort Worth area. Also during July 15th through 19th, we will be running summer reading academies in Houston, and you can see the cohorts that will be attending there. So sorry, friends, my computer is freezing a little bit, and you know, we can't have a webinar with some kind of technology. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Lastly, the week of July 22nd through 26th, we will be hosting summer reading academies in Lubbock and San Antonio. You can see the regions who will be attending each of those trainings. So we have contracted with Region 13 in order to organize and facilitate summer reading academies. by Monday, April 15th, if you could send me the name of your grant manager, who will be the contact person who will be responsible for disseminating information to your teachers about Summer Reading Academies. I will communicate that information to Region 13, and they will reach out to you with more information regarding registration instructions and hotel accommodations in mid-May. Okay, now let's dive directly into the READ grant application process. So throughout this process, you are going to have two main contacts, myself as your program specialist, and then Christina Grady as your grant specialist. I've also included Katie's contact information as the program director for elementary, middle, and state programs. However, you will primarily be working with both myself and Christina, who will then communicate questions to Katie as needed. You'll notice that there are symbols above each of our names, a target for me and a cash, money for Christina. That is to help orient you as we go through these slides together. There are going to be times when you have questions that are appropriate for programs, which will be noted by the target. So think of your questions relating to the heart of this grant process, building reading skills within your students by enabling your teachers. Those questions are going to come to me as your program specialist. When you have questions that relate to money reimbursement, then you're going to be reaching out to Christina, and those will be noted with the cash hands. So I've created a tentative grant timeline to get us through Summer Reading Academies, just to stamp some important dates coming up for your information. So obviously we were able to announce our READ grant awardees in early April. Coming up in May, there are several important dates that I want you to be aware of. First, on May 2nd, 2019, your READ grant application is due. That is a Thursday. The following day, on Friday, we are going to have a literacy coach kickoff in Austin, where we begin working together to prepare for Summer Reading Academy. We also wanted to note that at any time in May 2019, depending on your negotiations process with grants, READ funds will be released, but spending can begin at any point, and we'll get into the reasons why behind that in a few slides. In June, your grant manager will begin preparing monthly READ grant budgets to be sent in to us for review, and we will also be hosting weekly literacy coach PLCs digitally. So as you are beginning to build your literacy coach schedule for the month of June, we ask that you tentatively plan for 2 hours a week to be spent in a digital PLC. That will not be the norm for the entire year. Our goal is to have bi-weekly PLCs throughout the year that will last about an hour. But as we prepare for Summer Reading Academy, we want to build some extra time in as we collaborate together and prepare for our professional development sessions for your teachers. June 26th through 28th, we will have our literacy coach training in Austin. And then, as we've previously discussed, in July of 2019, we will kick off our Summer Reading Academies. Okay, the majority of the rest of our time together, we're going to spend looking at 3 documents that make up your grant application. They are the program guidelines, which you can see a picture of the cover in the top left-hand corner of your screen. Your application part 1, which is represented in the top right corner of your screen, and the application part 2, which is at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to give you a second to get these documents in front of you so that you can reference them and make notes as needed. We understand that some of you may be familiar with these documents, but we want to make sure that specific program requirements are noted for you, which is why we're going to review them together today. There will be time at the end of our webinar to answer questions, but as questions pop up along the way, feel free to ask those in our questions dashboard, and Katie will be monitoring that. Wonderful. Let's dive in. So our first document that we are going to look at together is our program guidelines. This document is not officially turned in as part of the grant application process, but it is an integral document to support you throughout the process. It gives you a general overview of the READ grant, contains contact information for your program and funding questions, and explains the requirements of the READ grant. Because you have already read through this document prior to the webinar, we're going to skip around to important sections that I want to discuss with you. However, if you have questions that relate to an area that I do not cover, please feel free to ask. So as we dive into this document, I want to point out two important things to you. First, at the top, anytime that I have taken a screenshot of a page of this document, I've listed the page number at the top for your reference. Also, beginning with the next slide, you will see either the target symbol or the cash hand symbol in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen so that you can refer back to who you should direct questions to, either myself or Christina, for each of the sections we're going to discuss. So this page, I just wanted to note that you will have a copy of this recorded session that has both myself and Christina's contact information, but this is also listed in your program guidelines. Okay, I'm getting questions about getting a copy of the PowerPoint, so I just want to share that when the session is over, both this recorded session and a copy of the PowerPoint will be shared with you. So anything on the screen you will have access to in the next day or two. Great question, thank you. Next, I want to point out an important provision on page 7 of this document, which is the supplement, not supplant. What we want to stamp here is that the READ grant is not to be used to supplant current literacy efforts in your district or region. For example, by hiring a READ coach, you should not be replacing a district literacy coach or regional support specialist. Because of this stipulation, your READ coach is not allowed to complete work outside of the READ grant activities. And as you can see at the bottom right of your screen, you have your cash symbol. So if you have additional information about the supplement, not supplant stipulation, you can refer to the Administering a Grant page on the TEA website or reach out directly to Christina Grady. Okay, the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you is direct versus indirect costs, which can be found on page 7 of your program guidelines. So as part of this grant, you have a limitation of administrative funds. This is broken down into two types of costs, direct administrative costs and indirect related costs. For clarification, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what each of these mean. So direct administrative costs include accounting and other fiscal activities, overall program administration, evaluating and reporting on the process and results of the program, monitoring compliance, and salaries and benefits of staff who supervise activities of the program staff. This line item can account for no more than 5% of the total grant amount for a given fiscal year. Indirect costs include costs that are incurred for a common or joint purpose benefiting more than one cost objective. These costs are calculated and reimbursed based on actual expenditures, regardless of the amount budgeted and approved in the grant application. So to give you a general example of both of these costs, so if you had a program that you were using to evaluate the READ grant, that would fall under a direct administrative costs. Indirect costs would be things like paper, where you might be purchasing reams of paper that are being used for both the READ grant and other uses within your district or region. So I just wanted to give a general overview of those two things because they can be confusing. That's by no means an exhaustive example, but if you need more information, then you can either look into the Budgeting Costs Guidance Handbook, which is located on the TEA Grants Administrative page, or reach out directly to Christina Grady. So on page 7 of your program document, you will notice a pre-award cost section. This is just to let you know that each of you may incur costs before the grants department officially releases your READ grant funds, such as travel for your literacy coach to the May 3rd READ grant kickoff. These costs are permitted and reimbursable due to the fact that pre-award costs are allowable from April 2nd, 2019. Okay, now we are going to begin diving into program requirements, which are requirements specifically for the READ grant. These begin on page 8 of your program guidelines, and they should seem pretty familiar to you because they were lifted out of the LOI request. I'm going to give you a second to reread through these and then take any questions regarding the specific program requirements for this READ grant. So I'll give you 1 minute. Okay, one question that we have received is if your literacy coach cannot be released by their district on May 3rd, can the program manager attend on that day? And we want you all to know that that is absolutely an option. So we understand that there may be several individuals that will be leaving in a specific district position in order to come on and serve as a literacy coach. And so we will be flexible and make sure that the information is given to someone in your region and or district. And we will look forward to working with your literacy coach as they finish up the school year and begin with us. Okay, I think that was all of the questions. So on page 9, you begin seeing the allowable use of funds. Two things that I want to stamp specifically on this allowable use of funds is bullet 4, which says office supplies including technology. These are limited to the literacy coach or grant administration staff and do not cover teacher materials or classroom supplies. Secondly, on bullet 7, other costs for activities must be approved by program staff. So if you are requesting funds for something that is not specifically listed in the allowable use of funds, it needs to be approved before it goes into your budget that you submit to the grants department. In addition, you will notice on the second to last bullet, it states other costs for activities or initiatives related to READ as required by TEA. We built in those costs when we were allocating your award amount, and we will send out more information regarding what those costs will be. But on your end, as you're filling out your budget request, you should include a line item for $4,000 of your budget to cover TEA approved costs, or excuse me, TEA requested costs. Moving on to unallowable use of funds, we just want to stamp, we've had this conversation through email and through the earlier webinar as you were beginning to apply for the READ grant program, but we just want to make sure that we are on the same page. Specifically looking at the last 4 bullets, so classroom materials for cohort teachers, which could include but are not limited to classroom libraries, technology, curricular licenses, or general classroom supplies are not allowable using READ grant funds. The exception to that are video recording devices may be purchased for school sites who do not have means for recording teacher instruction. And we're asking to only purchase 1 recording device per campus, and then having teachers within that campus share. We will not be covering any teacher training outside of the provided professional development. We will not be using funds to provide literacy coach training outside of the provided professional development, and we will not be able to use funds for school and district leadership travel reimbursement. Okay. The last section that I want to talk to you about, oh, excuse me, I think I skipped a slide. Page 10, performance measures. So if you read through this list, we have created performance measures that we are going to use to evaluate the success of the grant. Take a second to refamiliarize yourself with each of these items. As we formally kick off the READ grant in late May, after you have gone through the grant application process, we will be reaching out to schedule monthly phone calls with your grant administrator, as well as sharing more information about surveys and report specifications. Okay, one such survey that I want to bring to your attention will be going out next week. In order to make sure that Summer Reading Academy sessions will be as beneficial as possible to your cohort, we will be sending out a survey asking for review of a sample of the session plans that we plan to use. Each literacy coach and participating school and district administrators or leaders will be asked to review sessions, as well as a sample of your teachers. We will send all materials to the grant contact from your original application unless otherwise noted, and ask that this survey and related materials be distributed. If you could follow up with your literacy coach leaders and teachers so that we can get a full picture of how to better improve sessions, we would very much appreciate that. And you should plan to have that email with survey information come to you on Friday, April 19th. Now, program-related attachments. This is the last area that we're going to discuss from your program requirements document. You will notice you have several attachments that must be included on your as part of your grant application process. The first is copy of signed commitment forms from all participating school and district leaders. Some of you submitted all of those forms as part of your LOI application process. You can go ahead and use the same forms to attach to your grant application. Some of you had most, if not all, of your signed commitment forms from school and district leaders. You will want to follow up and get those completed before applying officially to the grant. The second attachment that you will need to have is a signed contract for your literacy coach position, which includes commitment to several bullet lines, attending 4 in-person development sessions throughout the grant award year, attending monthly digital professional development sessions, attending bi-weekly digital READ coach PLC meetings, conducting professional development sessions during the summer and throughout the year, collaborating with school and district leadership regarding the process of literacy instruction and achievement, providing one-on-one instructional coaching 3 times per semester to all teachers in the cohort, evaluating assignments and artifacts of all teachers in the cohort, preparing reports for TEA, and then the last item is it needs to be stated that the literacy coach will only have required duties relating to the READ grant and no additional duties will be required of the position. I've been contacted by some of you who use a standard hiring contract within your region or district and asked if this could be assigned addendum to that contract. That is absolutely fine. Please don't feel like you need to create an entirely new contract, but we do need this attached to your standard contract and signed by both the literacy coach and whoever handles hiring for you. And then last, at the bottom, you'll notice that your last attachment is a list of no more than 60 participants for the teacher cohort with 2019-20 grade level assignment teaching, grade level teaching assignments. I've had some questions requesting whether or not that number is flexible. In order to plan for space and sessions, we need to have that number at 60. However, we know that as you are finalizing this list, 1 or 2 participants may change, and that is okay. We will talk a little bit later in the webinar about when that list needs to be finalized. Okay, before moving on from this first document, are there any questions? Oh, wonderful. Okay, it looks like you have been asking questions all along. Perfect. So then we are going to dive into our second document, which is our application part 1. So if you want to take a second to get that document in front of you. This 4-page document serves as your contract between the TEA Grants Department in your region or district. And it also contains your statutory and program assurances as a READ grantee. The first page of this document, as you can see on the screen, it just allows you to fill out the details relating to your ESC or LEA. The meat of this document begins on page 2 with your statutory and program assurances. This list is a general overview of your requirements as a grant awardee. Attachments and program assurances do have some overlaps. You will notice that the literacy coach contract, the letters of commitment from school leaders appear in both attachments and assurances. Attachments must be turned in to grants as part of your grant application process. Statutory program assurances essentially are promises that you will send the documents to your program staff, which is myself, by the given deadline. So I am not going to read all of these to you today, but I do want to note some important assurances that relate to the program side of the READ grant. Starting on this page with bullet 4, applicant provides assurance to adhere to all performance measures as noted in the 2018-19 Reading Excellence and Academies Development Program Guidelines. Those are the performance measures that we read through a few slides ago that included monthly budgets, monthly meetings, etc. And so by checking that box, you are stating that you have read those requirements and will hold to those. Bullet 5 states that you will provide assurance that you're aware that the grant award is contingent on obviously having a literacy coach that's been screened and approved by TEA, having a 60 teacher cohort, and all district and school leader commitment forms. Bullet 6 deals with the literacy coach position, which we discussed in grant attachments. This is the same language. The only difference is that we've requested a signed contract by April 15th, 2019. We're aware that some of you, as you are moving forward to hire your literacy coach position, may feel a lot of pressure with that date being so soon. And so we wanted you to know that we are flexible in this deadline. We want to make sure that obviously we have a literacy coach position in place. If you are unable to have a signed contract on April 15th, then we can begin communication on when you feel like a more doable deadline is for your region or district. And we'll do everything that we can to support you having that document by May 2nd when the grant is due.
And if I may add, the really great news is that everybody has already identified literacy coaches, you've identified the teachers that could participate, and you already have the signed commitment forms from your school and district leaders. So we anticipate that this process is more confirmation over the course of the next month. And these dates of April 15th are just an opportunity for Becca to follow up with anybody who might need additional support or have a conversation to ensure that you're all set up to meet that May 2nd deadline. So while these assurances are here a couple of weeks prior to May 2nd, know that this is really intended for us to have a couple of weeks to follow up and ensure that we're all on the same page and to provide us program staff an opportunity to support you in any way that you might need.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to the next bullet. By April 15th, we would be very appreciative if you could send us your grant manager name and contact information. I have been sending all communication to the person who submitted the original LOI application for your region or district. And so if I need to be communicating with a specific person, if you could let me know by April 15th, I will update my communication list and make sure the information is getting where it needs to go. Our next bullet, similar to the attachments, it just states that you are going to provide TEA with a list of no more than 60 participants for the teacher cohort with grade level assignments by May 15th. We will use that in order to begin registering teachers and providing hotel accommodations. We do want to note that we understand that between May 15th and the start of Reading Academies, there may be small changes to your list of participating teachers. We just ask that you keep us updated throughout the end of May and June as that happens. And we will consider your teacher list final on the first day of your Reading Academy. So after day one of Reading Academy, any teachers who drop out of the program will be calculated into your retention rate, which we need to keep at 90% or above. Our next bullet is requesting that by June 15th, you will submit a tentative schedule for 3 two-day professional development sessions in October, January, and March, so that we can begin conversations to get those approved, and we can make sure that we have the dates on our calendar so that we can support your literacy coaches in planning and preparing for those. And then again, our last bullet on this screen deals with providing assurance that you will submit a copy of signed commitment forms from all participating school and district leaders. So if you have submitted all of your participating school and district leaders through the LOI application process, then you have already provided this for us. If you have not, I will be reaching out to you to let you know what forms I am missing so that you can gather those before the end of the school year. Okay, our last two statutory program assurances is that we are asking by June 15th that you submit a tentative administrator schedule to meet requirements of attending at least half of the training over the course of the academic year, which is 16 hours of training over the summer plus an additional 24 hours over the course of the school year. And this is required for each administrator with participating cohort teachers. We understand that it is difficult for administrators to schedule this far in advance. However, we really want them to begin thinking about how they plan to participate in Reading Academy early so that we don't end up in a situation where they've not been able to attend the required sessions. And then the last bullet point just lets you know that all documents that we've discussed in the statement of assurances will be submitted to me at rebeccaharris@tea.texas.gov, and you can find my email address there, and you all should have my email address from previous emails as well. Okay, on page 3 of application part 1, you have a list of potential expenses you may incur as part of the grant process. Here you will just choose which expenses you plan on covering with grant funds. At the bottom of page 3, you will notice a section that covers equitable access and participation. If for any reason you have barriers that would exclude equitable access and participation for participants in the REAP grant, you will check the second box and list your specific details here. If you do not have barriers, you will check the first box. If you have questions about what constitutes equitable access and participation, you can reach out directly to Christina Grady. And finally, the last section in your SAS application part 1 is the amendment description and purpose. This section is included so that if you and your grants contact need to make amendments to the original agreement throughout the year, they can be listed for both parties here. You will not need to fill out this section to submit your application. Okay, the last document in your application packet is the SAS application part 2. I'm going to give you a second to either pull this up on your computer or grab your hard copy. This Excel sheet will serve as your contractual budget for the duration of the READ grant and will be integral as part of the negotiations process you will complete with the grants department. As a warning for those of you who love Google Docs, this document is not compatible. So I just wanted to give you an FYI before you try to transition this to your Google Cloud. This first page or tab of the application part 2 gives you an overview of all of the tabs you will fill out. We're going to take a significant chunk of our time together today to review each tab, as well as specific line items you need to consider before submitting your final budget as part of your application. So before we dive into this document, I want to name a couple of important things for you related to budgets. First, as our team allocated funds to each of you for the grant application process, we took into account additional requested costs on our part, reduction of costs for items we deemed unallowable, and additional teacher and literacy coach travel. As you are creating this budget, if you have questions about what is allowable or unallowable as part of this grant, I am your contact to reach out to. If you are concerned about your budget, or if you have more than a few questions, I am happy to schedule a time for us to digitally meet and create a budget together. There are a couple of you that I will be reaching out specifically to in the next 24 hours to set up a time for us to discuss your budget in more detail. But regardless of whether or not I reach out to you, feel free to reach out to me if you would like to collaborate on your budget. That is part of what I'm here for. Now, if you have specific questions about budgeting items, such as where a specific item should live within this document, or anything related to the logistics of the document, that is when you should reach out to Christina Grady. Okay, the second tab on this document is payroll. One thing I want to name as we dive into these individual tabs, it's important to note that these are standard Excel sheets that the grants department uses. So there are places for line items that are unallowable under the REAP grant. A perfect example of this is the payroll tab. If you'll remember, one of the specific line items that is unallowable from REAP grant funds are substitute teachers. And you'll notice that you have lines here for substitute pay. Just because it's listed here as a general grant line item does not mean that it becomes allowable under REAP grants. The only allowable lines on this tab include potentially line 5 for project coordinator, where you may request funding for a portion of your grant coordinator. Potentially line 8, secretary admin assistant, if you are having your literacy coach serve as your grant administrator with additional support. And then line 16, which currently says enter position title here, you will list your literacy coach. You will also notice to the right, our funding is broken into 2 sections. Rider 62, Literacy Achievement, and Rider 64, Reading to Learn Academies. Because our funding comes from these 2 riders, you will need to split all costs 60-40. 60% of the total funding for each line item will come from Rider 62, Literacy Achievement Academies, and 40% of total funding for each line item will come from Rider 64. And this is true for all tabs on this application part 2.
The reason for this split is because the 2 different riders specify grade level bands. Rider 62 especially pertains to K3 teachers, where Rider 64 is for 5 teachers. So in order to ensure that we're maintaining the same equitable ratio in funding, we need to make sure that we're dividing the 2. That is also why you are asked to identify 60% of your teacher participants coming from grades K3 and 40% of your teachers coming from grades 4-5. We've worked hard to ensure that this is as straightforward and aligned as possible, but in these budget templates, this is likely where it's going to get the most confusing. But so long as you are maintaining the appropriate ratio and split in funding, 60%, 40%, then you should be all set up to meet the expectations of the grant as intended by the legislature.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to tab 3, professional and contracted services. You should have minimal information on this tab as there are very few allowable costs under this bucket. The main funds you may request here are rental spaces for your October, January, and March professional development sessions, and rental space for your literacy coach office if you do not already have space allocated for the coach. Tab 4 will cover all of the supplies and materials for the administration of your grant. As mentioned previously in unallowable costs, this should not include classroom materials, instructional materials, curriculum, or anything unrelated to your 3 tasks: convening 60 teachers, hiring a literacy coach, and providing logistics support for the READ grant. Materials for the literacy coach, such as office supplies and marketing and communication materials, would live in this tab. In addition to your requested amounts, this is where you will include a specific line item for TEA requested purchases for $4,000. We do not anticipate needing to spend all $4,000 of these dollars. However, we would rather be safe than sorry. So in calculating your budgets, we added $5,000 additional dollars. We're having you request $4,000 as a TEA requested items line item, and plan on tentatively needing to spend $2,000 of it. Okay, tab 5, other operating costs. In tab 5, you will see that lines 1 through 7 are darkened. These specific line items are non-allowable under the READ grant. Allowable costs under this tab include literacy coach and teacher travel. As you are calculating these costs, you need to consider two things. One is that while TEA is covering travel for teachers for summer reading academies, it will be your responsibility to reimburse teacher travel for the October, January, and March convenings. If teachers will be traveling outside of their district for these dates, you will need to calculate and request travel costs for each of these dates. 2, you will be responsible for literacy coach travel for the entire year. This will include travel to Austin for our one-day May kickoff, travel to Austin for our 3-day June training, and travel for 2 summer reading academies. So I want to stamp that. Literacy coaches will be facilitating and traveling for 2 of the 3 summer reading academies. Travel for these 4 separate activities must include mileage, hotel stay, and per diem. In addition, you need to include mileage for your literacy coach to travel for coaching sessions throughout the school year. So that is a lot of travel to keep in mind, and we wanted to be able to list that for you so that you can take all of that into consideration before submitting your final budget. Okay, tab 6 is a capital outlay tab. This tab is for any materials or licenses that total $5,000 or more. Due to the restrictions listed in unallowable costs, you should not have any line items for this tab. Our last tab, budget summary, will auto-populate. Oh, I had a request to repeat the portion regarding literacy coach travel. So excuse me for just a second. I'm going to go back. So you will need to plan essentially for 5 buckets of travel for your literacy coach. The first is a 1-day May kickoff in Austin. They will need mileage, hotel stay, depending on your location. The second is travel to Austin for our 3-day June training. All literacy coaches will need mileage, hotel stay, and per diem. While your teachers are attending 1 summer reading academy, literacy coaches will be asked to facilitate 2 at 2 of the 3. So you need to plan for 2 weeks of mileage, hotel stay, and per diem for your literacy coaches. And then you need to include mileage for travel for your literacy coach to travel to your participating districts throughout the school year for coaching sessions. Fantastic. Okay. Back to our budget summary tab. You will notice that line items 1 through 5 match the previous tabs. These will auto-populate for you as you fill in tabs 2 through 6. The only thing you will need to add on this tab is line 7, percentage of indirect costs. After you have done so, you will enter the total amount requested on line 10, and your maximum allowable administrative and indirect costs will auto-populate for you. If you have, again, I want to stamp, if you have questions about allowable budget items, please reach out to me. If you have more detailed questions about the function of this document or where something should live, Christina Grady is the person that you want to reach out to. Okay. As we went through these 3 application documents together, we discussed several program tasks that you are required to meet in the next 3 months. Let's take a second and review these together. So when looking at a specific grant application in assurances deadlines, We need you to submit the literacy coach contract by April 15th, 2019 at 5:00 p.m. However, if that is not a doable ask, please reach out by that date so that we can keep communication open as you work to hire your literacy coach. Please submit your grant manager contact information by April 15th, 2019 at 5:00 p.m. so that I can update my communication documents as well as share that information with Region 13 as they begin to reach out to schedule Reading Academy hotels, registration, and reimbursement processes.
Just real fast, we're getting a couple of questions about the attending, literacy coaches attending to different summer summits or summer trainings. As Becca mentioned, we added $5,000 to your budget in order to address both TEA requested expenditures, and as Becca also mentioned, to take into account additional travel expectations that we didn't see in many of the budget applications. So just know that from TEA's perspective, we have provided additional funding to ensure that you've got the amount necessary for your literacy coach to attend 2 different summer summits, in addition to the roughly $2,000 that we have for intended costs. Know that that has been taken into consideration and was proactively built into your award amount.
And again, I have tentatively cleared time on my schedule in the next week so that if you have more detailed questions about budgets, again, I would be happy to schedule a call and we can walk through line items and talk about allowable versus unallowable costs. The last line item under grant application and assurances is the actual application deadline. Please submit your application to grants by May 2nd, 2019 at 5:00 p.m. In regards to your read or literacy coach, which I have been using interchangeably, May 3rd is our Read Coach Kickoff in Austin. This will be a one-day training to orient the read coaches to their role for the 1920 school year. In June, we will begin weekly PLCs. Please make sure that your literacy coach has tentatively 2 hours for each of the weeks in June to be on a call as you're building their schedule. And then again, those will move to bi-weekly 1-hour PLCs beginning in August. And then June 26th through 28th, we will have our Read Coach training here in Austin. In terms of the April Summer Reading Academy Session Plan Survey, on April 19th, I will send out sample sessions and instructions for surveying these samples. And we are requesting that your read coach, all school and district leadership, as well as a sample of your teachers participate in this survey. You will not need to create your own sample of teachers. I will send a list of specific teacher roles that I need to review the survey. In regards to your teacher cohort, we want to have a semi-finalized list sent to us by May 15th so that we can begin planning logistics for our summer reading academies. However, that list is not finalized until day 1 of your summer reading academies, and you can update that list weekly with TEA as you make small changes throughout the month of June. And in regards to district leaders, please collect all leader commitment forms if you have not done so already, and submit tentative leader schedules for professional development, 1 per administrator, by June 15th. Okay, I have a request to go back to the date slides. So let's relook at summer reading academies. So from July 8th to the 12th, we will be in the Austin area, Region 13, San Marcos, Region 12, and Region 3 will all attend. From July 15th to 19th, in Houston, we will have a Region 6, Region 4, Region 5, and Beaumont. We have not found a specific location in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so Region 10 or 11, I believe that Region 13 is going to be reaching out to you if they have not already done so, to help find a location for us to hold reading academies. And Region 7, 10, and 11 will attend in this at this reading academies session. And finally, from July 22nd to the 26th, in Lubbock, we will have Region 14, 16, 17, and 18 attending. And in San Antonio, we will have Region 2, Spring ISD, Sheldon ISD, Southside ISD, La Jolla ISD, and San Felipe del Rio ISD.
And then I've got just two follow-ups, just kind of summarizing some of the questions that we've also received. The first one is that, of course, like we were anticipating, there are definitely being changes, whether it be to teacher participants, or there might even be campuses or district level changes that you are interacting with or encountering at this point. Please know that this window is the window for you to make those changes. So I would follow up with individuals that had previously signed commitment forms and ensure that they are still committed, knowing that we have dates. Please ensure that teachers that you had signed up are going to be continuing serving in their same role and capacity in the coming year. But that's why we have about a month, and that's why the teacher commitments, we're looking for tentative lists in mid-May, and then school and district leader commitments we're looking for at the application deadline of May 2nd. So you've got hopefully some time just to ensure and say, hey, we got it, you still in? If you do find that there are many changes that you didn't anticipate, please do feel free to reach out to Becca. We are certainly here to help and know that this timeline has been really abbreviated. The second thing that I want to mention as well is that we very much intended for the program to be 15 months, knowing that our literacy coaches would be then employed and working on this project for 15 months. So we will definitely, one, be flexible and take into consideration teachers or individuals that are coming from ISDs that are not able to meet the May 3rd deadline. The one thing that I will say is, well, we'll be interested in obviously making travel approachable for our literacy coaches in July. Because it is expected that they're with us full time, they will have activities to work on throughout the course of the summer, which also includes attending the summer summit. So Becca will be coordinating with literacy coaches, again, to ensure that we are trying to be as flexible as possible. But it is expected that our literacy coaches are able to work through the summer.
Wonderful. What other questions?
We're just kind of cruising through the questions now. What we'll do is we'll keep the webinar running so that you're able to document your questions in the question box. And then what we will do is we will be able to, one, set up the webinar, the slide deck, and then there are a couple of requests for just kind of like one-pagers of all the different trainings and sessions that individuals would need to attend, and we'll definitely be able to get that information out to you as well. There are a couple of questions that I was not able to answer in the questions section that we'll be able to follow up with as well. The really beautiful thing about our webinars is obviously we can export these questions into an Excel spreadsheet, so if it is useful for the group, we will also be able to pull these questions down and can send them as an attachment so that you also have a follow-up of all the questions that were asked by different participants.
And again, I just want to stamp one more time that I will be reaching out in the next 24 hours to set up a time with some of you to discuss budgets before you submit to grants. If for any reason you do not hear from me, but you feel like you want a collaborator or you want to run through line items, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. That is what I'm here for, and I'm here to support in this process so that we ultimately have a grant that impacts our teachers and our students in a positive way. And I look forward to working with all of you. Those of you that I haven't had a chance to speak with, I look forward to getting to know you better in the coming weeks. And as Katie said, we will keep the webinar open to record your questions, and I will be sending out a follow-up email with PowerPoint slides, the recording, as well as common questions and answers. Thank you all so much for attending today. If you do not have any more questions, feel free to jump off. If you have more, we are currently watching our question and answer board. And again, thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.